How are you doing, everybody? My name is Al Mateo and Coach Greg Manos. Welcome back to another edition of Coaches Weekly with men's volleyball coach Coach Manos. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. And Coach, you guys were able to play a few games throughout these past few days. You guys had a try against Wisconsin-Stevens Point and Roosevelt, and then you also were able to play your first conference matchup against Rockford on Tuesday. But before we get to that, let's talk about the try that you guys played this past week against Wisconsin-Stevens Point and Roosevelt. And it was a pretty good day. You guys were able to split the day, but it was two competitive games. You guys were able to not necessarily finish it out against Wisconsin's Point, but then came back and beat Roosevelt. And I just want to talk about the parallel between those two. You guys lost the first set in both those games, but were able to come back and win the next two. Now the difference was, you were not able to finish the first game against Wisconsin-Stevens Point, but then able to finish the second against Roosevelt. Just talk about the difference in closing between Wisconsin-Stevens Point and then Roosevelt.
Sure. We wanted to schedule two tough matchups prior to our conference so that we were really able to excel or just compete at a high level. And with Stevens Point, they challenged us in newer, different ways, and it was good to see our guys make those mid-game adjustments and then be able to kind of fulfill their ability to score, right? So in terms of down the stretch, it was a working point, but again, our ability to close against a team that has been very, very successful relative to our conference is a vote of confidence for us, because we know if we're right there right now, despite our youth or inexperience, however you want to put it, we're in a good position to learn from that. And I think just whether it was film review or that experience was positive. Playing against Roosevelt, a D2 team then, who was very physical along the net, I think we were able to learn really quickly. So seeing our guys be able to close that out a little bit more immediate, have that sense of urgency, and be able to find success. For us, that Saturday was a really positive experience for us, and it allowed us to carry things over heading into our conference season.
Yeah, and we talked about last week that challenge of facing Roosevelt, Division II opponent. And it's their first year at D2, there's still a big difference in jump from where they were in NAIA. And not only did you guys go out and compete with them, you guys beat them, Was there something that you saw that surprised you when it came to that game in terms of just matching that talent level that they had? Or was that just something that, you expected to happen?
Yeah, fundamental discipline continues to be our emphasis as a group and from our coaches to our players. And I think it's highlighted when you play against players who, quite frankly, are more physical than us, right? So they had some really long, strong, physical guys, and we had to play a certain way in order to be successful. So we've at times played kind of what's convenient based on our strengths, but against that team, we had to shift. And it was great to see the team recognize that early, right? The first set, maybe that was the learning point of, okay, we can't just do whatever we want to do kind of thing. And it was nice to see them really excel and kind of pick them apart. They had one or two weaknesses, just like every team does. And we did it over and over and over again. And that's kind of that mentality of maturity in terms of that discipline of following the game plan. That was neat to see, not just follow suit, but then they really did a good job of just handling the other side of the net for the next three sets. So it's great to see that immediate click in terms of our game plan, and then also see that consistency in terms of execution for the rest of the match then.
Yeah, and two guys that were able to execute that game plan were Eli Mosher and Leon Godzowski, who pretty much swept the NAC Player of the Weeks for you guys. And big congrats to you and to them as well. But to speak about the success they were able to have this past week and able to execute those game plans you were trying to do. Eli Mosher got his 2,000 career assists, which continues his name into the record book, being the top guy in terms of that category. And also your own sophomore Godzowski, being able to be a big defensive end. I believe he had 18 blocks that past weekend. So just speaking about those sides of success and how they were able to contribute in that and be able to earn those NAC Player of the Weeks.
Yeah, Eli's been a staple for the program, and I appreciate him so much. We've been making sure that he's been honest, that he's been consistent, and it was really neat to see him just kind of control the floor for that entire Saturday. So a big kudos to him. It's neat to see that he's already fourth in terms of all-time career assists in the NAC, and based on his pacing, he'll keep moving up. So he's really earning his recognition, and this one was definitely much deserved based on his ability to just flourish within our system. His consistency as being a true six-row threat, whether it's scoring or just being able to move the ball around based on what our coaching staff is being asked of him. He's doing a lot of positive things, and it's encouraging to see that recognition that has been long deserved for sure. Leon, his growth has just been immaculate. You know, he came in as a freshman and he was kind of deemed one of our freshmen, I guess you could say. Every team has a couple, and he's one who's a big personality, but at the same time, like, his growth curve has been tremendous. So seeing him get that recognition, especially defensively, in terms of finding the scheme, fundamentals, working with our coaching staff, especially Coach Peter's done a really good job, our assistant with him, in terms of just keeping him humble, keeping him honest, and keeping him forward looking here. To see him tally some of those numbers is really impressive. So in some matchups, Leon's been another team's worst nightmare, and it's encouraging to see again that growth from freshman to sophomore year, where he was still kind of learning the ropes at this point in the season, just being a freshman last year, versus now he's got it down. So it's really fun to see him full circle make that jump. And again, he's just a sophomore, so we know that whether it's him or other guys seeing that great level of improvement, that's honestly the biggest vote of confidence for our coaching staff, because we know whether it's Leon, the rest of our sophomore class, quite frankly, is doing extremely well. And then also knowing like the direction of the program, if we've been able to get big time input from some of our younger guys, and the fact that we're able to compete at this level based on our maturity, seniority, however you want to put it, I mean, we're still the youngest team in the conference. And the fact that we're doing this well and moving this far forwards, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, speaking of which, you guys were able to take that young team into conference play. You guys were able to start off 1-0 against Rockford. And as you guys creep closer to 500, right? Talk about that game in terms of just the adjustments you had to make, because, you guys won the first set pretty comfortably, but then Rockford came on a little run that second set, and then they even led for about the half of that third set. You guys would have to just, come back and storm back into that game. Just talk about, it wasn't a cruise control win. Just what did you see that stood out to you in that game, and how your team was able to just come together and stay composed?
Yeah, you talk about finishing and what that experience was on Saturday. And I think that really translated to our ability to close there on Tuesday, where both the second and third set were tight at points, and we were even down at one point. But in terms of closing out, it was neat to see. We had some great service pressure, and that was a big part of our matchup, but also seeing that clutch moment, whether you call it the red zone or that after 20 moment, like that's when it's critical, where mistakes are highlighted even more, and then being just consistent is ultra important. So seeing our ability to close was great. And being on the road too, it's our first conference game, we're on the road. There's always those first kind of game jitters, but it was nice to see them really push through. If that game had been drawn out, it would have been a different dynamic, versus for our guys to just be able to take care of business when it's tight, when it's close. They did what they needed to do, and regardless of how it might have looked or been in the moment, again, all signs are pointing forward in terms of their ability, their growth, and their development as a group.
Yeah, this is a team that you guys lost to the beginning conference play last year, and now you're able to start off, 1-0 against them. Must feel really good. And now, as we look forward to Saturday, you guys are playing MSOE, who you guys have struggled with these past few years, 1-6 over the last 7. Just talk about, as you're in your time being here as head coach, just the kind of matchup that you have seen from MSOE that just makes them just such a tough opponent for you guys.
MSOE has been consistently at the top of the conference. Just a lot of kudos and respect to them, their coaching staff, and their program. They do a couple things really well. Like from the service line, they're very aggressive and they're very consistent in terms of their receive game, right? That's really their strength, is their serve and pass, which at the root of all volleyball, that's step one. So that first contact is a big point of emphasis for us this week. We're going to prepare for what they do specifically so that we can defend it in a high level. And then at the same time, we're working on things, one, that we can improve on internally, but two, where are we going to find a way to win, right? And we know that on paper, and we know how to attack it and draw it out, but I think that's the execution where it's nice, where we have a couple of days, we can really hammer it home, and whether we're starting yesterday or for our next 2-3 practices before the match, right? Being able to execute or match their strength, but then also excel against their weakness, that's the matchup for us. But again, that's what we want. We're in the thick of it now. We're in conference, and
Welcome to Geisman Gymnasium as we got some Cougar volleyball action going on today. I'm Eric Perry. Joining with me on the call is the wonderful Kayla McLeod. Kayla, big match for both of these teams today.
Absolutely. It's only the second conference game for the Cougars, so CUC 1-0 in conference, and on their home court looking to make that 2-0 quickly early on.
Yeah, they got off to a good start. They got back-to-back wins going, hoping to get that streak to 3. MSOE, on the other hand, on a bit of a 5-game losing streak. This is their first conference match overall, so they're hoping to start conference off right with a notch in the win column. You look at the MSOE record, 1-8. That's kind of deceptive because out of the 9 matches they've had, 5 of those have been against nationally ranked teams.
Yep, and that's gonna help them a little bit later down the road as they kind of get into the heart of conference play. I think we really are gonna see this Raiders team kind of kick it into high gear, and those early losses aren't going to make a big difference on the stat sheet, but in their style of play and how much they can overcome in conference, that's gonna be where you see those adjustments later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Iron sharpens iron. When you play the very best, you're gonna end up kind of modeling. And we saw in their MSOE's last match against Carthage. They lost 3-0, but they fought tooth and nail with the number 5 ranked team in the nation.
Absolutely, and these two teams both looking to keep things going. Again, like you mentioned, the Raiders looking to get their first conference win. Cougars looking to get their second conference win, start things off 2-0. But this is a team with a lot of history in favor of MSOE. The Raiders all-time 6-1 in the last since 2019, I should say. And the only time the Cougars have beaten the Raiders is in the first round of the NAC tournament, the first year that the Cougars made the NAC tournament. So Cougars really looking to kind of hold their ground and prove that they're still that team that made history here at CUC a few seasons back, and they've got those key components to pull that win today.
Yep, the lineups have been done and play has started. Blocked at the net by Gzowski, tipped up, hit over, save. Hollaback with the hit, hits off the fingertips, up, sent over the net by, and that's going to get through just past out of the hands of Van Gato. That's going to be a kill by, I believe, number 13 of Parker Rings of MSOE, and MSOE strikes first. Raiders
Might have put the first point up on the board, but we've seen it all season with this Cougar squad, a back-and-forth battle that really kind of goes for point, as you see there.
And right there, J.R. Stella sends a shot to the back line to tie this game up at 1 apiece. And yeah, it seems like at points this season, the Cougars have struggled with coming out of the gates firing, but we've seen that as the sets go on, they seem to get stronger and stronger. So that shot by Stella gets over. And number 12, Tommy Claus, tried to get a shot over the net, but just mistimed the jump, and the ball ended up landing, hitting the ground. Cougars got their first lead of the game as J.R. Stella is back to serve.
Stella, a sophomore on this CUC team, so still a young roster overall, but a huge instrumental player.
Definitely, shot gets over by Stella. Fielded by Stella, set up by Mosher. Shot by Marcin Hoffman's hit to the back line of MSOE. Set up, gets over. Gato gets a hand on it. Mosher runs back to hit it. Hollaback with the shot. Bounce off the hands of 13. Good shot by Hoffman, just off the hands of Parker Rings. MSOE gave chase, but they could not end up making contact, and the Cougars jumping out to a 3-1 lead here.
Absolutely, and just some really good effort there to try to keep that alive, the diving effort and then chasing after it, but a hard hit ball like that is sometimes just hard to contain.
As that's going to be a service ace by J.R. Stella. Beautiful shot, just clips the line. MSOE just watched it go by thinking it was out, but Stella could have placed that more perfectly.
And that's something we've seen this Cougar squad struggle with a little bit early on in this season is the placement. Sometimes they're on these really good streaks where they're finding those gaps in those placements, and sometimes they're struggling infinitely.
As that shot by Stella just barely fielded by MSOE, set up by Mosher. Leon Gzowski with a hit. Gets back over. Stella fields it. Hit up by Mosher. Marcin Hoffman, great save by MSOE to get it back up. It's over. Hollaback hits it. Dig by Stella. Shot by Hoffman to the back line. Fielded by Zappe. Gets over. Fielded again by Mosher. Popped up by Gato. Hollaback tips at the line. Rejected at the line by Gzowski. And that shot finally Number 12, Tommy Claus, able to find the back corner, ending the rally that the two teams had going and breaking a 4-0 Concordia scoring run.
I mean, that front line for CUC, we've talked about it so far this season, Eric, is so strong. Leon Godzowski at the front of the net just recently won Defensive NAC Player of the Week, so a really strong front line for CUC, and the Raiders were just able to continue to go and keep swinging and finally able to find some space on that back row.
As that big shot by Hollebeck's going to bounce off the fingers of MSOE, ricocheted off the hands of Jackson Phillips, and just like that, CUC answers the Raiders' point with one of their own and backed up to a 3-point lead. Now we got number 5, Ayaza Reef, coming in to serve here for the Cougs. His serve gets over. Fielded by Rings. Hit up. Oh, just barely gets past. That's going to be a point for the Raiders. Number 4, Cardenas, made a dive at it for the Cougs, but unfortunately was not able to get ball. And possession back to the Raiders with number 12, Tommy Claus, serving. Hit up by Gato. Oh, what a beautiful serve by Mosher. And that was just sent back by Alexander Ford. Just sending a rocket launcher to the back line out so he couldn't even react.
Alexander Ford, a huge component on this team, a freshman, and he's been really strong at the front line, but also swinging the ball so aggressively.
Save gets up. Mosher's just going to have to free ball it over the net to MSOE. Hit up, blocked at the line by Ford. Big shot by number 2, Callan Harris. That is going to clip the line to give the Raiders the point. Back to a 2-point Concordia lead with number 2, Callan Harris, serving for the Raiders. Serve is over, hit by Hoffman. Popped up by Mosher. Hoffman blocked at the line, and that's going to end up going out. Parker Rings blocked it at the line. Unfortunately, the block just went out of bounds. And so the Cougars take the point. Now we got number 10, Marcin Hoffman, up to serve. Hoffman with the serve, gets over the net, fielded. And that's the big hit by James Zapay, just finds the middle of the floor. Cougars not able to react in time.
That's something that this Raiders squad is going to be looking to do quite a bit, is getting that ball set well for Zapay and getting him those opportunities. As we've already seen tonight, he's not afraid to swing and find that space.
Absolutely not. He's got 2 kills already. His Mosher's just going to send that one back over. Blocked at the line by the Cougs. Gets up. Hit by Rings. Nice placement by Rings. He just placed it out of the hands of J.R. Stella. Van Gato made a dive, but unfortunately couldn't come up with anything. MSOE back-to-back points. Cut this Cougar lead to 1.
Raiders finding some of that space. That was not a large gap there between Stella and Gato, but able to utilize that space, and they do so again off that block there.
That was a monster block at the line, I believe, by number 11, Matthew Schultz. He just sent that one straight back at the Cougs, and this game's not up at 7.
Mentioned it earlier on this broadcast, Eric, but a game of runs is going to be huge. We've seen this Cougar squad go on runs.
As Hollebeck with the big hit just hits MSOE and went straight down to the Cougars, cut off the MSOE run to take back the lead. Yeah, as you said, it's going to be a game of runs. When the Cougars are hot, they're hot. But when they're cold, they almost just kind of disappear, it seems.
And one of the things that makes a difference in the games that we've seen so far this season is their ability to stay in it. Getting too far ahead or too far behind makes it a little bit of a struggle, but the Cougars play best when they're in this back and forth kind of point range.
Yeah, when they can go toe-to-toe with the teams. If the other team's throwing punches at them, they can throw some of their own, as long as they're able to keep it within reach. Raiders get the point. Now Matthew Schultz with the serve. Gets over, fielded by Ford, popped up. It's hammered to the back line by Stella. Back up, oh, Hoffman not able to come up with the shot. Had to reach forward, and MSOE's back to their first lead since 1-0.
A massive swing there from Harris. Not much that the Cougars could do with a swing like that.
No, Harris was swinging for the fences on that one, and Hoffman just really nothing he could do to make good contact. Hit by Hoffman, set up by Mosher. Shot by Hollaback, fielded by Harris. Hit back up, set by Mosher. Hit by Gazowski, it's a little tap over the line. Saved by Gato, that's just going to go over. Saved by Hollaback, hit up by Mosher. Massive shot by Leon Gazowski. Hammered it back at MSOE. Beautiful shot, and Gazowski ties this one up at 9.
I mean, that was just the keeping your composure for the Cougars there. A lot of back and forth and hard one-touch hits from the Raiders, and the Cougars were able to keep their composure and settle things down enough to be able to get the right hit.
As the just quick swipe over the net by Parker Rings quickly gives the Raiders back the lead. But going back to that last point, like I said, it was just a lot of good improvisation by the Cougs to keep the ball alive and eventually line themselves up with a good shot. Served by Rings is over the net. Hit back up by Hoffman. Hollaback hits it over. Set up by Phillips. Hit over. That's going to find the back corner. Beautiful shot by Callan Harris. Just clips the far side corner with not a Cougar in sight.
Cougars are notorious for leaving those back corners open a little bit. They find themselves kind of creeping forward, pressuring that front line and looking for that space, but ultimately it leaves either completely open back lines or it leaves one person to cover that complete area.
I was going to say that J.R. Stella went for a shot at the line, was not able to clip it, so MSOE takes a 12-9 lead. But yeah, this Cougar team very much, they're going to win the game at the front line, at the net. They're just have a tendency to leave that back area just wide open. Big shot by Hollaback is not going to find the line. That's going to force Coach Greg Manos to call his first timeout of the set. Cougars got off to a good start, but since then, MSOE's gone on a 4-0 scoring run to take a 13-9 lead. And
Absolutely, and the Cougars really needing to kind of recompose and settle things down. Like I mentioned, they're best when they can kind of settle a little bit. We saw that one rally for them where they were able to kind of hold things back and take control and then get the point from it. So being able to take a timeout to kind of recompose is huge.
And Greg Manos in the timeout now telling, listen, get your heads back on straight, just kind of calm down. Yeah, go back to what you were doing earlier. Don't get frustrated. Just make sure to keep the communication going and line up your shots. Don't rush them, because that's how you lead to shots that, as we've seen, are just too far out or just not angled right, and MSOE's able to field easily. Cougars, they're finished with their talk. Manos sent them back out onto the court. MSOE still talking it over, talking about presumably the game plan, which is at this point probably just keep the good times rolling. You got a 4-point lead here in set number 1. And one big thing looking at it is MSOE's hitting it at 36%. Cougars, 19%. It's not a great stat if you want to be able to win a set.
Absolutely not, and that's something that the Cougars are looking to adjust and take advantage of here and kind of come out of that timeout a little refreshed.
Big shot by Stella, gets back over, and miscommunication is going to give the Cougars the point. Jackson Phillips hit it up. There was no Raider in sight, and Cougars off to a good start out of the timeout. They get the first point. Stella gets the kill with the assist by Mosher, and now Stella himself back to serve. Serve just angled too far left, and that's a service error for the Cougs. First service error by either team today, and possession goes right back to the Raiders.
Service errors, something that plagues this Cougar squad quite a bit. 167 total service errors on the season so far. So a really big area that the Cougars struggle in. And
the big shot by Gazowski just bounces off the fingertips of Seth Thomas, and the Cougars answer with another point of their own. So now we got a Reef coming in to serve. Gazowski usually just a big force at the line with blocks, but he hit a big shot on that one to give the Cougars the point. Served by a Reef is over, fielded by Thomas, hit up by Rings. Just over Hollaback and out of reach of Mosher, and so that's going to give the Raiders the lead. Cougars doing a sub. Gazowski once again back in for a Reef. Now we got Tommy Claus serving for the Raiders. Hit up by Hoffman. Shot by Hollaback's fielded. Hit up by Rings. Hit back over. Mosher was not able to find it. He dove for it, but could not make contact. The Raiders up to their biggest lead of the day so far, 5 points.
Raiders really capitalizing on that spacing issue that the Cougars are struggling, and Cougars are able to get there, just not quite quick enough.
No, you're right, and that shot by Hoffman just going to go into the net. Cougar error, and errors were something that the Cougars have really struggled with this year. Like you said, 167 service errors, but in their last match against IIT, Cougars had 23 errors in just 3 sets. Shot by Hoffman's up, tapped by Hollabeck, saved by Harris. Passed over by Thomas, saved by Cardinez. Up by Mosher, hit by Hollabeck, trying to go side to side, but was unable to find the line. And that's going to force Coach Greg Manos of the Cougs to call another timeout early. And as the two teams take a timeout, so will we. We'll be right back here on the Cougar Sports Network. Welcome back here to Geisman Gymnasium. Cougars facing an 18-11 deficit as MSOE's just gone on a run now. Cougars call a timeout to try to minimize the damage, and right out of the timeout, Tommy Claus of the Raiders just going to send that serve straight into the net. That'll be the first service error for the Raiders tonight, and Cougars will take all the 3 points they can get.
Absolutely, and Hollabeck is one that is always looking for it and continues to kind of battle back no matter what.
And the big shot by Alexander Ford just clips the far side corner. Great play off the block at the line, and Cougars got back-to-back points, which is exactly what you want to see coming out of the timeout. Hollabeck serve gets over the net, fielded rings, hits it up, and that big shot is just going to get past the Cougs. I believe that was hit by Matthew Schultz, who's just able to find the gap for the Cougs and get the point for the Raiders. Callan Harris back to serve. Hit up by Cardinez, hit by Mosher. Power shot by Gazowski's going to be hit and caught by PL right below us. Great catch. Can tell she was a former softball player.
Absolutely, the athleticism is showing there from the former assistant SID at CUC. And point for CUC, it continues that momentum.
And Hoffman immediately answers with a serve that goes a little bit too far, and so the teams trade errors, and this is a 20-14 MSOE lead. The Raiders just 5 points away from taking set number 1. Hit by Mosher. Big shot by Alexander Ford, but it was blocked at the line by Seth Thomas, so the Raiders just sent it straight back, and now Raiders just 4 points away. Fielded by Ford. Tapped over, kind of a dual block there. Parker Rings gets it back over for the Raiders. Hit up by Ford. Power shot by J.R. Stella. Goes side to side just out of the diving fingertips of Jackson Phillips. And the Cougars able to make a little bit of a dent. Still face a 6-point deficit, though, here in set number 1.
Absolutely, and Alexander Ford, a young freshman who can really be the spark of momentum that the Cougars need, and looking to get that going here on the serve.
Serve by Ford gets over. Shot up by Rings. Blocked the line. Hit up by Mosher. Hoffman hits it up. J.R. still a big shot. Saved at the line. Kind of a dual block by both sides. Mosher gets it over. Passed up Rings. Tries to hit it. Mosher hits it up. Set by Hoffman. Hollaback with the shot. Rolls across the top of the net before ending on the Raiders side. Get up by Thomas. And the shot by Thomas is just going to be a little bit too far, and the Cougs take the point.
And that's where you really see that mature and growth so far, even in this early season for the CUC team, is being able to keep your composure and get back to where you need to be to restart your sets on those quick bursts. I mean, a back and forth ball is never fun because it doesn't give you the time to get into your space, but the Cougars really utilizing that experience that they've had so far this season.
As the shot by Harris just over the net, just out of the diving fingertips of Marcin Hoffman. But as you were saying, when the Cougars are able to get energized and get the momentum on their side, they're like a freight train almost.
Absolutely.
Matthew Schultz serving for the Raiders, 3 points away from set number 1. Shot goes over, fielded by Hoffman. Tipped up by Mosher. J.R. Stella with the shot right back. Ring sets it up. Seth Thomas blocked at the line by Mosher. Another off the fingertips. Gato to Mosher. J.R. Stella with the big shot right off the fingertips of Schultz, and a beautiful shot by Stella. They get the point back to the Cougars.
A much-needed swing there from CUC. Being able to get a kill like that is exactly what you need to shift that momentum.
And we've seen them go on big runs. So this first set isn't totally out of reach for the Cougs yet, as that serve by Hoffman by Mosher is just going to be a little bit too far. Give the Raiders the point. Now just 2 points away from taking a 1-0 lead. Hit by Hollaback. Get by Mosher. Just tapped over by Stella. Good decision by Stella. Tommy Claus was not ready for just a light tap. Ball just went off his arm and straight down.
Really good read from Stella to be able to recognize that their front line had backed off a little bit, anticipating that was going to be a power swing. And being able to read that and instead just drop that right at the net, a really, really good read.
Great read by Stella as his serve gets over. Blocked, and that's going to go off the fingertips of Hoffman, I believe, and end up hitting floor. So now the Raiders 1 point away from taking a 1-0 lead. They're going to send Seth Thomas back to try to set up the kill shot. Served by Thomas is over, fielded by Gato. That's just going to go over the net, and little too strong by Tommy Claus. He saw red and he was swinging for that one. Shot just a little bit too strong, and the Cougars kind of get bailed out with that one.
A lot of space on that back line is exactly where he was looking to put that, but just a little bit too much power on it, and it ultimately worked in the Cougars' favor.
Served by Ayaza. Reef gets over, and again the Cougars a little too strong as that shot by, I believe, Callan Harris is going to be a little bit too strong. So the Cougars making it a little bit closer here at the end of set 1. A Reef with the serve. Hit up by Thomas. Hit by Parker. Rings blocked at the line. Hit by Hoffman. Set up by Mosher. Good play by Ford. And that shot by Callan Harris is going to find the back line of the Cougs. And that will do it here in set number 1. MSOE takes it 25-20. And Kayla, we saw the Cougars get out to a good start, but then MSOE was just kind of able to turn this set around.
Absolutely, and I mean, the thing about the Raiders is they're going to continue to do what they do well, and we saw that especially on those last 3 points. The Raiders were looking to find the ball to drop on that back line, and first attempt, little too strong. Second attempt, little too strong. Third attempt, they found that back corner exactly where they wanted it. So that repetition from the Raiders is exactly what's going to get them into those positions where they're gonna find their points coming more consistently.
Yeah, the Raiders were literally just doing the plan of, if at first you don't succeed, try again. They only needed 1 point, and eventually they were able to find it. And as we had a little under 2.5 minutes left, here as the teams change sides, we're going to take a break, but we'll be back here in just a few on the Cougar Sports Network. And we're back here on the Cougar Sports Network. MSOE Raiders taking a 1-0 lead over the Cougs. It was a close set, but in the end, MSOE was able to get the last few points to win it. But, Kayla, we've seen over the course of the season, the Cougars do seem to get better as the match goes on.
Absolutely. They start to get a little bit more comfortable, and they're understanding their opponent as we get further and further in. We've seen them come back this season and win sets 2, 3, 4. You know, we've seen them kind of make those adjustments that they learned from set 1 and then put them into motion for sets moving forward.
And yeah, it was a close set number 1. It wasn't like the Cougars just kind of imploded. It was 25-20, and the stats were pretty even. 16 kills for the Raiders versus 14 by the Cougs. Cougs had 6 errors. Raiders had 4. It was pretty evenly matched. You just want those couple of hits per match just end up going your way. Serve gets over, fielded by Hallebeck. Set up by Mosher. Stella with the shot right off the fingertips of Seth Thomas, and the Cougars strike first, taking a 1-0 lead here in set number 2.
You know, Eric, talking about the stats that are pretty similar for these two teams is a huge factor, but one that's not as surprising as you would think is that the Raiders are outblocking the Cougars at the net 2-0, and while that seems like a small margin, the Cougars are predominantly strongest at the net, and on the season, they're out blocking the Raiders by quite a large margin. So it's something that not seeing the Cougars be as strong at the front line so far this season, or so far this game, excuse me. It's interesting to note and keep an eye on.
Yeah, usually that Cougar front line is forced to be reckoned with, but not the case so far. That serve by Seth Thomas going to be a little bit too strong. Cougars take back possession with the 2-1 lead. The Raiders' second service error of the day. Cougars had 3 in set number 1. As a serve gets over, fielded by Phillips. Hits over, blocked the line by Hallebeck. Set back up. Power shot by Harris, fielded by Cardenas. Up by Mosher, and just a quick little tap by Ford. Beautiful shot. Parker Rings go for it. He made a little bit of contact, but just a great deception move by Alexander Ford. He zigged when the Raiders thought he was going to zag and got the Cougars the point. But the Raiders answer quickly. Tommy Claus with a power shot to the middle of the floor. Cut the Cougars lead back to 1. And the theme of the day has been that these two teams are very evenly matched. Neither team really able to getting that big of a lead on the other. Serve by Claus gets over, and that's going to be just a little bit too far. Cougars take the free service error from the Raiders, and they go up 4-2.
Another service error, not something that you want to see, as the points off of errors has been pretty evenly matched on both sides, but either way, you mentioned it, Eric, not winning this game on errors.
As Marcin Hoffman tried to go side to side, but unfortunately was not able to clip the line, just put too much juice behind it. And so the two teams trade error, service error for attack error, as the Raiders now serving. Number 2, Callan Harris with the serve. Gets over the net, and it's going to be just outside. He was trying to find that back corner. Could not clip it. So Cougars had back-to-back-to-back errors between the two teams, and now heading back with Marcin Hoffman serving. Serve by Hoffman gets over. Fielded by Phillips. Popped up. Hit by diving Gato. Miscommunication. Mosher just taps it over. What a great play by Mosher. As behind him was chaos. He just side-swiped it over to the net into the wide-open Raider gap.
Eli Mosher, that's your NAC Offensive Player of the Week right there, and he's showing exactly why he's the NAC Offensive Player of the Week.
And if he continues hitting shots like that today, he might end up going back-to-back. So that's just going to be hit over, blocked at the line by Ford. I don't think the Raiders meant for that first touch to get over the net. And just like that, Cougs jumping out to a 7-3 lead early here in set number 2.
Absolutely, but this is a familiar place for the Cougars. They were up early in set number 1 and then struggled to contain the Raiders and keep that lead, and a service error there from Hoffman is feeding into that a little bit. So right now is essentially the crunch time for the Cougars. Can they continue to hold on to this lead? Can they do the things that need to be done to stay in this game? and do these things consistently throughout the set.
Yeah, they need to hold fast here, and that's going to be the shot by the Raiders just going to go into the net. Cougars take the point right back. And like you said, they got to be able to keep momentum on their side, keep the energy, keep the bench hyped, and that's what's going to carry them through the set and hopefully help them to win it. Shot by Ford gets over, fielded by Rings. Big shot by Matthew Schultz. Gets through the Cougar gap, and MSOE answers with another point of their own.
Raiders looking to continue what they continued in the first set. They were trailed early, but they were able to kind of come back point by point. Not massive runs all at once, but a little here, a little there before taking that lead and then really running away with it. So for the Raiders, this is a familiar spot as well as another monster block at the hands of Tommy Claus, but this is a familiar territory for them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like you said, in set number 1, when the Raiders got the lead, they just never looked back. They just kept it going and got a lead as big as 7 at one point, ended up winning 25-20. That serve gets over, hit up by Mosher, tapped over by Hoffman. Shot by Thomas, blocked at the line, but unfortunately it stayed on the Cougars' side, and just like that, Raiders have this within 1.
Absolutely. Again, this is something that we've seen, and we've seen the Cougars' front line be aggressive throughout the season, and going up for these blocks is key for them, but being able to control those blocks and send those in a controlled manner straight back down on the other side of the net is what we need to see from the CUC squad.
That shot by Stella gets over. Tapped over, hit by Hollebeck, set up by Mosher. Hollebeck with the big shot, just a little. Oh no, it's gonna say it was off the fingertips, I believe.
They called someone in the net.
Ah, gotcha. Sorry, called one of the Raiders in the net. That's gonna be the Cougar point. Got kind of bailed out on that one, but hey, Cougars will take it.
Absolutely, Hollebeck looking to shake that off, struggling a little bit on those cross body swings. When he's looking for that opposite side, he's really having some hard time keeping it in and containing it. A little bit too much power consistently. So a really good chance for Hollebeck to get the point off of that regardless and kind of shake that one off.
And that's going to be a service error by Mosher. Hit up by Hollebeck, set by Mosher. Hollebeck just a nice tap, found the line. Cougars are the first one to reach 10 points on the night. And
that's what Tyler Hollebeck needed right now, something to kind of shake everything else off and say, you know what, this is my game. I got control of it here.
Now J.R. Stella heading back to serve, hoping to get the Cougars an even bigger lead. Big shot gets over the net. Hit by Mosher, popped up by Gato. Hollebeck, right off the hands. Fielded by Gato, popped up by Mosher. Hoffman blocked the line. Hit up by Gato again, set by Mosher. Hollebeck just with a little tap. Though they're going to say that was kept alive. Great play by the Raiders. Hit up by Mosher. Gadzowski hit it, and that's going to be 4 hits by the Cougs. Coach Greg Manos of the Cougars was saying he thought that one hit the ground, but ref said otherwise. Just a fantastic save by the Raiders to keep that ball alive.
Absolutely. A diving attempt from Jackson Phillips, the libero for this Raiders squad. Just being able to get that ball, not only stop that ball from hitting the ground, but getting enough momentum on it to pop it high enough up that someone can do something with it is a huge key, and the Raiders really took advantage of that.
They did. Now teams trading shots to the front of the net, blocked by Gadzowski and Hoffman. That sent that one return to sender for the Cougs. Cougs get the point back, retake a narrow 2-point lead.
Cougars needed a big block like that, not only for the points on the board, obviously, but to shift that momentum. Like I said, struggling to get some blocks up early in this game, so being able to get that block is huge for them.
And that shot by the Raiders just to the near side corner wasn't a Cougar in sight. So now Gadzowski heading back in for a reef. And the Cougs now just, again, hold on to a 1-point lead as these two teams are very evenly matched here so far today. Hit up by Mosher. Big shot by Hollebeck, blocked at the line. Set up by Mosher. Hit over by Ford. Blocked by Ford at the line again. Hit over, set up by Mosher. Hit by Gato. Hollebeck with the shot. Raiders just having to improvise and get it over. Hit up by Hoffman. Set by Mosher. Hollebeck blocked to the line by the Raiders again. Hit up by Mosher. Hoffman couldn't get a good shot. Missed time to the jump. It just went off the fingertips. And on the back of some big blocks by the Raiders, point ends up going their way as this match is tied.
I mean, Harris, Schultz, Zapay, just everywhere on that. As that ball was moving with the Cougars, those three were moving along that front line and not letting anything easy over. So a really exhausting effort there from the Raiders, but paying off in the long run.
Yeah, they were just shifting, doing whatever they had to do to get the block. As that big block by Zapay is going to hit the ground on the Cougar side and give MSOE their first lead in set number 2.
I believe that Cardenas got his hand on that, making that diving attempt. I believe he pancaked enough to get that ball popped up, but nobody chased down after it. So unfortunate there, but really great effort from the freshman.
As that's a big shot by Alexander Ford right off the fingertips of MSOE to tie this one up. But like you said, it was a great play by Cardenas, just the dive to try to keep the play alive. Unfortunately, there was just no Cougar there to keep it alive. Hit over. Parker Rink with the shot. That's a big shot by Callan Harris, just off the arm of Tyler Hollebeck, and MSOE takes the lead right back.
Harris really taking control of this set so far, of this match so far. 9 total kills here already, so just absolutely dominating the floor for the Raiders.
His 9 kills, most by either team so far, as that shot's going to be hit up by Claus, tapped over by Thomas, hit by Mosher, set by Gato. Hoffman hits it up, hit by Ford. Ford just sent a rocket launcher off the set by Mosher, but just too much strength behind it. Couldn't find the back line. And now the Raiders taking a 2-point lead. And if you're the Cougs, you really want to try to cut off this Raider momentum, because you saw what happened in set number 1. When the Raiders got going, they were unstoppable.
Absolutely, and the Raiders, on the flip side of that, looking to capitalize. They've seen this film before. They know exactly where to attack and what to do to keep the Cougars frazzled.
And that big shot by Callan Harris just bounces off the arms of the Cougs. Going to end up going out of bounds. That's going to force Coach Greg Manos to take his first time out of the set. And as the two teams take a quick break, so will we. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on the Cougar Sports Network. And we're back here on the Cougar Sports Network. MSOE holding on to a 15-12 set number 2 lead overall, winning 1-0. And Kayla, as we saw heading into the timeout, MSOE just went on a big 3-0 run to jump out to this lead.
Absolutely. I mean, the Raiders really stole momentum of this game. Not only the momentum, but they stole the lead as well, and really kind of taking control here. And it's something that we've seen already so far in today's match, as that's exactly what happened in set 1.
Monster shot by Hollebeck, fielded by Phillips. Hit up, and the ricochet end up going out. The Raiders tried to keep it alive, but it ended up ending out of bounds as the Cougars take the first point coming out of the timeout.
A little bit risky there, as the Cougars were already celebrating. They thought that was a dead ball, but the Raiders able to dig it out of the net and get that ball over, just didn't land in bounds.
But that ball was pretty close to the line. If that was an inch or two in, Cougars would have been lost the point. Hit up. Just going to be fielded over the net by Hoffman. As that shot by Pay is going to be off the Cougar fingertips, and MSOE quickly answers with a point of their own. And it seems like whenever the Cougars are able to get a point or two in their favor, the Raiders are just able to answer right back and get back to a bigger lead. That shot, big shot by J.R. Stella. Just hit a power shot to the gap and get the Cougars the point, and hopefully the momentum and the energy.
A much-needed swing from Stella. Stella leading this Cougar squad today with 14 kills so far, but really just needed it to get things going.
And unfortunately, that serve by Forge is going to go straight into the net. So Raiders just get the serve back and the point. So they got a 17-14 lead. Number 11, Matthew Schultz, serving for the Raiders. Serve's going to be a little bit too strong, so the two teams trade service errors, and the Cougars get possession back, hoping to make up some ground in this 2-point deficit.
Raiders averaging 1.29 service, they're collected 126 total service errors this season so far, so something that we've seen them do pretty consistently and unfortunately give away those free points.
That's going to be tapped over the net. Oh, a quick play, but saved by the Cougars, and that shot by Stella is going to be blocked at the line by Matthew Schultz. Great play by the Cougs to save the ball. It was just a quick tap over the net by Tommy Claus, but unfortunately the shot was blocked at the line. Gets over the net, fielded up by Hoffman. Shot by Stella. And I think they're going to call one of the Raiders in the net. And so the Cougars will take the free points. Still trying to come back. And one thing you look at, MSOE's hitting percentage in this second set, it's only 17%. Cougars are only at 6%, which is not great if you want to win a set.
Absolutely. And again, service errors in general are going to be the difference maker in this game as the Cougars give yet another free point off of a service error.
Speaking of errors, that's going to be the Cougars' 14th error of the day. Meanwhile, the Raiders have half of that. They only have 7. They've been playing clean volleyball, and that shot just out of the diving hands of Van Gato. And just like that, the Raiders' first team to reach 20. They got a 20-16 lead here over the Cougs.
CUC needing to regain their composure, find how to reassess everything and be able to kind of settle things back down a little bit. Because right now playing a little bit frazzled, and we're seeing some of those silly mistakes happen.
And that's going to be back-to-back service aces by Seth Thomas. That's going to force Cougars coach Greg Manos to call his second timeout of the set. And yeah, it's just the Cougars came out of it had a little bit of momentum on their side. Stella had some big shots, but then MSOE turned it up, went on a three-point scoring run, and 2 big service aces by Seth Thomas.
Absolutely, and that's been a difference maker here late in this set. But again, this is something that we've already seen. This is pretty much the exact tale of set number 1, and we're seeing it kind of repeat itself.
Yeah, Cougars, you never want to go down 2 sets to none because then that is a lot of ground that you have to make up. They're hoping that they can find a way to go on a run here to end set number 2, take the points and end it with the win, but just kind of there's not a whole lot of great communication going. There's some miscommunication. Meanwhile, the Raiders just really firing on all cylinders. It feels like they've just been getting the big shots in. They got 3 blocks, 2 aces, and they've just been doing a great job at playing good, clean volleyball that's been able to get them to a 21-16 lead.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of that comes too with the difference in the rosters. The Cougars, a predominantly young roster. We've got 2 juniors and a graduate student for the Cougars, and on the Raiders side, we've got a good blend of everybody. We're seeing some juniors, some sophomores, some freshmen, some seniors, some grad students. So the experience is in a wider range for this Raiders squad, and I think you're really kind of seeing that come to play when you get to these final moments in this frazzlement.
That shot by Gato ended up going a little bit too far, and a monster hit by, I believe, James Cepage has had a rocket shot back at the Cougs, and MSOE takes the first point out of the break. It's now Seth Thomas back to serve again. Shot gets overfielded by Hoffman. Gazowski with the shot, ricocheted off the MSOE fingertips, and usually Gazowski's not a big attack guy. He's more of just a big defensive wall at the net.
Absolutely, but when push comes to shove and you need a point, something inside you just kind of changes and clicks and does what you got to do to get that point.
Well said as the reserve gets over, and the shot by Callan Harris just out of the range of Mosher, who reached for it but was not able to find the ball. And now MSOE 2 points away from taking a 2-0 set lead.
This Raiders squad done a nice job of maintaining composure here after they stole the lead a little bit and then kind of ran away with it and finding those places to attack the Cougars.
And they're going to say, I believe the Cougars were over the net on that one as Gators' shot again just went a little bit too far. Now the Raiders, they're at 24, just need one more point to take set number 2. Hit up, hit by Mosher. Shot by Hollaback is going to be a little bit too strong, and that's going to do it here in set number 2. And it was set number 2. Same as set number 1. Cougars jumped out to an early lead, then MSOE came storming back, and once they got the lead, they never looked back.
Absolutely, and we're just seeing some of that kind of those similar tendencies come into play here. Tyler Hollaback in set number 1 struggled to find his rhythm and find his placements on the court, and as we saw in that last point scored, the same thing is happening here in set number 2, just struggling to get into the rhythm of things here.
Yeah, it's just been issues with ball placement for the Cougs. They've got the strength, they've got the angles. They're just not able to reel the shots in. They're just going either too far or not far enough into the net, or they're just angled a little bit too far to the outside. And that's something where if they want to come back from being down 2-0, they really got to fix those.
Absolutely, and it's not an impossible reach. The Cougars have statistically done better in the back half of games than in the front half, so being able to kind of take these things they've learned quite a bit in these first 2 sets and then being able to make those adjustments and find that rhythm that they're struggling to kind of get into so far early here today, it's not an impossible feat for CUC.
No, it's definitely not. All you have to do is win 3 straight sets, which they have done several times this season. Little under 2 minutes left here as the teams change sides, and so we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back here soon for set number 3 on the Cougar Sports Network. And we're back here on the Cougar Sports Network. The MSOE Raiders jumping out to a 2-0 lead. And as we were saying during the break, Kayla, set number 2, pretty much the same as set number 1.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like we did watch the same set twice there as Cougars really started out hot and then struggled to keep that momentum going. And the Raiders let the Cougars get hot early and then took control later on. And that's the tale of exactly both sets number 1 and set number 2.
Yeah, the Cougars starting off hot, able to get the shots to fall. Things are going their way, but then it feels like once MSOE turns it on, the Cougars just kind of start scrambling, and they're not sure what to do. They don't have the answers, it feels like.
Absolutely, but again, something that we've mentioned already is the difference in these two squads. CUC, a predominantly young team. Meanwhile, the Raiders are pretty spread out, but something interesting to note here as we get ready for set number 3 is the Cougars changed liberos. Now wearing the libero jersey is number 4, Michael Cardenas. Previously, it was Van Gato. So looking to make a defensive change to try to help some of that backline errors that the Cougars have been making.
Yeah, your back's against the wall, so at this point you just got to say, all right, well, this wasn't working earlier, so we're going to try this now. So that serve gets over the net for Hoffman. Shot is going to fall out of bounds, and the Cougars take a 1-0 lead here in set number 3. The only question is, as the momentum gets going, will they be able to hold on to it and keep the Raiders at bay? And that serve's going to go straight into the net for the first service error of the set.
Errors is going to be something that is going to make or break this set for both teams essentially, but the Cougars specifically already down 2-0 in terms of the entire match, and limiting those errors is going to be vital in this set.
And when your back's against the wall, you can't afford to just give the other team free points. As a big shot by J.R. Stella just finds the back corner, and a beautiful shot by Stella. Cougars going to need to get some more shots like that in this third set if they want to come back.
Absolutely, the Cougars looking to take advantage of things where they can, and finding space in that back row is where they can take advantage.
As the Reef serve gets over, and the big shot by Seth Thomas just out of the reach of the dive fingertips of Eli Mosher. Just like that, the Raiders tie it up early. Seth Thomas got the shot, now heading back to serve. Serve gets over, fielded by Cardenas, and the Cardenas reception is just going to go soaring out of bounds into the hands of one of the fans, and MSOE jumping out to an early lead.
And that's going to be a difference maker here in this final set as well. We saw the Cougars across the board struggling to receive some serves and some monster hits from this MSOE squad, specifically the serves from Seth Thomas, as he kind of went on a run there at the end of the second set. And so Cougars really needing to kind of build off of that here in set 3.
They're unable to field the shot that gets right over the net, so the Raiders jumping out to a 4-2 lead. And as you were saying, Seth Thomas, stat sheet might not necessarily show it, only has 4 kills listed for him, but he has been a big presence, just sending missiles at the Cougar defense. Saved by Mocher, hit over by Hollebeck, and it's just going to be wide right, and already the Raiders jumping out to a quick 3-point lead.
Hollebeck still struggling to get into a rhythm here, and it's impacting the Cougars, as that's kind of their go-to. They're always looking to find Hollebeck on the floor and see what they can give him, because he is the leader on this court. But unfortunately for Tyler Hollebeck, just struggling to get in rhythm today.
Yeah, well, as you're saying, when he's on, he's on. In the match against Rockford, he had 14 kills in 3 sets. Today, through 2 and change, he's only got 5. So they're hoping to get an answer here. As the shot by Seth Thomas just soars, Cougars will take the second free point. Cut this MSOE lead back down to 1. Now Hollebeck's heading to serve. Hollebeck's serve is over, fielded by Rings. Hit back over, fielded by Cardenas. Mosher shoving forward out of the way. J.R. Stella blocked at the line. Hit up. And the rocket launcher by James Apey, just out of the reach of Marcin Hoffman, and the Raiders answer the Cougar mini flurry with a point of their own.
Like I mentioned, being able to kind of contain those monster swings from the Raiders has been a difficult task for CUC, as you see once again there from Hollebeck, just unable to receive the ball well. The Raiders putting a lot of force and a lot of backspin on their serves and their hits, and it's just proven to be difficult for CUC.
Yeah, the Cougars haven't been able to get clean receptions on the Raiders' shots. Weren't able to get a clean one there, as the Raiders now taking the lead. Set up by Mosher. Shot by J.R. Stella, blocked at the line by Callan Harris, but luckily the Cougs block was wide right, and the Cougs managed to get to 5 points, still facing a 2-point deficit. JR Stella with the serve. And just another service error for Stella. Just sent that one right into the net. And one big thing looking at the stat line, we were talking about it a little bit in set number 2. This Cougar front line is typically very dominant, but they've only got 2 blocks on the day versus 5 by the Raiders.
Very uncharacteristic for the CUC squad, and we're seeing that as another block from the Raiders. We're seeing that difference really make an impact in what we're seeing on the scoreboard.
Yeah, it was a monster block by, I believe, Parker Rings and James Sapay to just send it straight back at the Cougs and get their lead to 4. So this third set is very quickly slipping away for the Cougs. Fielded by Cardenas, hit up by Mosher. Big shot by Ford. And just a quick side swipe over the net by Rings. Cougars were not expecting it. It fell in the middle of just about a big circle of them. And that's going to force Cougars coach Greg Manis to call a timeout as this MSOE team has quickly jumped out to a 10-5 lead.
Absolutely, and realistically, I mean, this is a very well-experienced Raiders team. I mean, that was a very strategic placement on that ball to be able to find that gap and take advantage of the Cougars not expecting it. But, I mean, this Raider squad finished 4th in the NAC last year. They were picked 4th in the NAC preseason poll and even received 1 first-place vote in the preseason poll. So the top-tier talent that we're seeing on the floor for MSOE is not surprising in any way, shape, or form.
No, definitely. Again, we talked earlier, you look at the record for MSOE and you think, having a down year. But in reality, they've had to go through a gauntlet of non-conference teams. 5 ranked teams, and now that they're in conference, they can continue to play at the high level that they were playing at, that was giving trouble to those highly ranked teams. And as we've seen so far today, has been a very real trouble for the Cougs.
Absolutely, and as you guys can probably see on your screens right now, Charlie T. Cougar, the mascot for CUC, getting the CUC fans hyped up. Some fans from the MSOE section were starting to get their fans a little too rowdy, and Charlie did not like that. He wants the focus and the shift in energy here for the Cougars. So Charlie doing his part to bring that momentum to the Cougars on the floor.
100%. Charlie always does his best to try to bring the hype for whatever Cougars home team is playing. Now we just got to see if the volleyball team can answer. Hit up by Mosher. Big shot by Ford. Jackson Phillips made a play but couldn't get it. And hey, looks like that Charlie T hype worked so far. Cougars strike first out of the timeout.
That is for sure the Charlie T. Cougar energy booster right there.
It's Alexander Ford now back to serve for the Cougs. Gets over the net, fielded by Thomas. Hit up by Zapay. Blocked at the line by the Cougs. Blocked again at the line by the Cougs. Hit back up off the fingertips, fielded by Ford. Hit up by Mosher. Hollabeck again struggling with that accuracy. He had a big shot going for the relatively open back line of the Raiders, but just put too much juice on it.
Absolutely, a really good attempt there from the Cougars to continue with some hard blocks there and making the best of what they can. And unfortunately, when your swings just aren't finding the right spot, there's just nothing you can do on it.
As that shot by Matthew Schultz just ends up in a spot where no Cougar can react to it in time, and the MSOE now has doubled up the Cougars. They got a 12-6 lead here in set number 3. Serve gets over, fielded by Hoffman, and hit up by Mosher. Just tapped over by Hollabeck. There was no one in. Well, there were people in sight, but instead they were leaving the libero, Jackson Phillips, to try to make up the distance. A little bit of miscommunication there for the Raiders.
And that's exactly the adjustment that you need to make if you're Tyler Hollabeck. You're struggling to get your swing to go in the right spot, so being strategic about where you're placing that ball and maybe not taking those monster swings, but finding where you can tip and place the ball strategically is a better option when you're struggling like that.
As the Raiders had to get it over. Big shot by Leon Godzowski off the hands of the Raiders, and Godzowski again coming in through in the clutch when his team needs him. He's hoping to keep that going. It's now Eli Mosher with the serve. Gets over the net, fielded by Phillips. Hit up by Rungs. Blocked at the line, hit by Mosher. Sorry, Hoffman, then Mosher. Mosher to Hollaback, who again, they're going to say it was no tip. Mosher's pleading his case. The Cougs pleading their case. As now Greg Manos is coming over to talk to the near side official. They're trying to say that a Raiders player tipped it.
I will say, Eric, from our angle, it did appear that way as well, but at the end of the day, we're not the official calls, and it is kind of hard to see from here. I did think that there was a tip, but the officials know better as the Cougar bench erupts.
Matthew Schultz's serve goes into the net, so you know what they say, ball don't lie, so maybe it means that shot was tipped by the Raiders.
Either way, a necessary momentum shift for the Cougars as they're still trailing.
Hot shot by Hoffman gets over, hit up. Phillips just has to kind of receive it. Hit up by Cardenas, up by Mosher. Power shot by J.R. Stella, finds the line. And hey, Cougars got the energy back on their side. They are feeling it now. Still down 3, but they're making up ground point by point.
Look out, Raiders. Here come the Cougars.
Hoffman serve gets over. Hit by Rungs. Thomas blocked at the line by Tyler Hollaback. What a rejection by Hollaback. Just, you want to talk about momentum. The Cougars have it in spades now.
If there's one thing that the Cougars do not like, it is when calls don't go their way. So they're going to take advantage of that and go to work here.
And another shot by Hollaback. Another one. And the Cougs now are only trailing by 1. MSOE bench is complaining about something, but the Cougars have gone on a 4-point scoring run. This is now just a 13-12 Raiders lead.
The Cougars really looking to regain momentum and done so in a monstrous fashion. Despite the Raiders getting the point there, I mean, the Cougars essentially have taken over Geisman Gymnasium.
That was a good play by the Raiders. Hoffman wasn't able to field it cleanly. But now the Cougars, they're kind of feeling it, hoping to make the most of it. Hit up by Stella. Tyler Hollaback, he found that one right off the kneecap of Jackson Phillips. And again, this is just a 1-point Raider lead as Hollaback has seemed to gotten a little bit of a groove now. He's not swinging for the fences. He's swinging for, I guess you could say, just the outfield. And it's been working for him. Served by Reef gets over. Hit up by Rungs. Tapped up. Great save by Hoffman. Hit by Stella. Hollaback just has to get it over the net. Parker Rungs hits it. And that's going to be wide. Callan Harris's shot is a little too far. Tries to go coast to coast. It does not work out. And we are tied here at 14 apiece.
I mean, the Cougars, like I mentioned earlier, struggling to get, if they get too far ahead early in the set, they struggle to get that momentum. Cougars were down early in this set. Find momentum here.
As that shot by Harris goes straight into the net, the Cougars have a lead. And the Cougars now have gone on a 9-2 run as the Raiders are going to call a timeout. They feel this set quickly slipping away from them, and just coming out of that last Concordia timeout, it kind of felt like they were a bit dead in the water, but they are right back. They have life.
Absolutely, and the spark of being able to find your swing, you know, Tyler Hollaback was able to secure a good chunk of points there for CUC and really kind of come into himself, but also the energy and inside Geisman. I mean, having the crowd erupting behind you, there's a great group of CUC men's volleyball alumni in the stands here today, so being able to kind of feed off of that, and you know, currently in the stands is the CUC all-time individual career record holder Luke Vozinelek. So having some greats of CUC men's volleyball in the stands to kind of build that momentum with you, it's a huge, huge impact.
Now it really all goes back to that potential missed call by the refs, where the Cougars thought and Hollaback thought they had a tip by the Raiders that the refs said otherwise, but coming out of that call, the Cougs were fired up, their players were fired up, and they were angry. And their anger has translated into points.
Absolutely, and that's the one thing, as you can see, the Cougars bench fired up right now, and the difference that you're seeing in energy between these two benches is very telling. Granted, the Raiders still have the two-set victory over CUC as of right now, but CUC just way more energy and momentum here coming out of this timeout.
As a Reef serve gets over, fielded by Zapay. Shot by Thomas, fielded by Reef. Ooh, and just miscommunication there. Ford went up for the hit, wasn't just kind of mistimed the jump, and so coming out of the timeout, Raiders will take the point and knot it up back here at 15. So now Seth Thomas back to serve for the Raiders. Serve's going to be over, fielded by Cardenas, hit up by Mosher, I believe, and just set back over by Hollebeck. Big shot hit by Hoffman, set up by Mosher. J.R. Stella hit by Phillips, just gets right over, and Alexander Ford's shot blocked at the line by number 12, Tommy Claus. And just like that, Raiders have jumped back into the lead, 16-15.
Tommy Claus has just been a menace at the net for the Raiders squad today. That, I believe, is his third block.
So that shot's going to be hit up by Mosher. And Ford just tried to get the tap over, but either mistimed the jump or didn't put anywhere near enough strength behind it. And MSOE is going on a quick three-point run and are leading 17-15.
The shift in momentum is very obvious here, and the Cougars had that momentum out of the timeout. The Raiders have the momentum, and off of another service error from the Raiders, now the Cougars picking that momentum back up. So this final stretch here in set number 3, I think we're really going to see that kind of go on bursts of point for point or couple for couple.
I agree with you 100%. That's going to be hit up by Cardenas. Goes over the net, and the shot's going to end up bouncing off the Cougars, and the Raiders will take the point back up to a 2-point lead now as Tommy Claus back to serve. Hit up by Cardenas. Hollebeck off the fingertips again, and that shot falls for Hollebeck. Is able to swing for the fences on that one. Bounced off 2 pairs of Raider fingertips, and the Cougars keeping it close, only down by 1 as J.R. Stella heading back to serve. He's already got 11 kills for the Cougs and a service ace, so hoping he can keep the momentum going. Hit by Thomas, up by Rungs, blocked, tipped up, fielded by Hollebeck, set by Mosher. Hollebeck, play by the Raiders just to keep it alive. Hit up by Hollebeck, Mosher. Marcin Hoffman fielded by Thomas. Phillips. And that's going to be wide. That's going to be a little bit too hard, and the Cougars have knotted this baby up again at 18.
A real big game changer here in this set is Tyler Hollebeck finding his groove. Being able to rely on him to be able to put that ball in play has been huge, as we've seen him struggle so far early in this game, but really doing a solid job of keeping the Cougars in it here in set number 3.
And with that, J.R. Stella's shot serve is just going to be a little bit wide right, so the Raiders will quickly take the lead and the point and the possession back, as Callan Harris, most kills by a player on either team, is now serving. Fielded by Hoffman, popped up by Mosher. Ford switched directions on that one as Seth Thomas gets it up. Gato, great play to just keep it alive. And Cardenas played it. Unfortunately, it went right off the bottom of the basketball hoop. And the Raiders take the point as they're the first team to reach 20.
Great effort there from both Gato and Cardenas. Just unlucky, as you said, to be able to catch that corner of the basketball hoop.
Going to be hit by Gato, set up by Mosher. Alexander Ford, big shot straight through the Raider gap, and Cougars keeping it close here, fighting for their lives. Only down 1 point now in set number 3 as the man behind that last kill, Alexander Ford, now going back to serve. Serve gets over, fielded by Thomas. And that's a great shot over the net by the Raiders. Gato got a hand on it. Ford reached his leg out to try to kick it up, but could not find ball. So the Raiders are now back to a 2-point lead, just 4 points away from taking the day 3-0.
Cougars really looking to regain composure here, getting a little frazzled after a couple hard hits and struggling to contain it, but keeping momentum as a monster swing there from Tyler Hollebeck does so. That
giant shot by Hollebeck ricocheted off the Raiders, went straight in their general direction. Ball bounced up a few stairs, and now the Cougars Hopefully they got the energy back. They're feeling themselves as Mosher's serving. Gets it over. And that was just in. And that's going to be a shot for Hollaback off the fingertips of the Raiders. And we are knotted up at 21 apiece. Hollaback with just the big shot. I don't think the Raiders meant for that first touch to get over. Mosher gets over, fielded by Thomas. Up, hit by Mosher. Set up by Cardenas. Hollaback, just a little. Oh, they're going to call fingertips on that one for the Cougs. And Hollaback's shot gives the Cougars the lead. And now as we are here in the bitter end of this third set, it's still at either team's set to win. It's just going to depend all on the momentum. Mosher serve gets over and just a little bit wide right. So we're at 22-22 here in the waning moments of set 3.
And that's what we talked about, Eric, even early on in the set, is that errors is going to come to bite some team in the butt here as another error from the Cougars ties things up and gives the Raiders a chance.
And Hollaback's shot was blocked at the line by the Raiders, but that block went straight out of bounds. Cougars take the lead back 23-22, trying to keep their day alive. As Alexander Ford, Marcin Hoffman, my apologies, now back to serve. He gets it over. Taps it over, hit by Mosher. Set up by Cardenas. Hollaback off the hands of Harris, and the Cougars 1 point away from pulling off the big comeback here in set number 3. They got the momentum. They're feeling it. They're looking to Marcin Hoffman saying, buddy, finish the job. Win us the set. Gets over the net. It's fielded. And they're going to call it in the...
They're going to call out of rotation.
And the Cougars are going to take this third set on an unforced MSOE error.
Both teams are confused as to what's happening. This near side ref did call out of rotation against MSOE. The MSOE coach, the head coach of the Raiders, Shane Reed, in his 10th season, questioning it.
He's pleading his case. The far side, the Cougars were switching sides. Far side judge told him to go back to their own side for the time being, as the two referees will now confer.
It appears as though Reed is pleading his case that potentially the Cougars were actually moving out of rotation first, as he was gesturing over to the Cougars side and making some hand movements. So the two officials kind of seeing. I wasn't sure what the main official had initially called. I know the near side called out of rotation, but it does appear to be two different perceptions, as it was the head official that told the Cougars to stay on their side for the time being.
As the near side judge walks over.
And it appears as though we might be getting a reserve here.
As the lovely coot music plays in the background.
Waiting for the official signal. And it does appear that they are going to call the Raiders out of rotation and give the points to CUC and ultimately give the set to CUC. Coach Shane Reed incredibly unhappy with that, sending his captain over to go discuss with the head official, but a bit of an unconventional way to end the set for the Cougars.
Oh, 100%. Usually you're expecting you're going to end the set with a big shot by Stella, maybe a rejection at the net by Gazovsky. No, it's just going to be on a slightly questionable out-of-rotation call by the near-side judge. But, hey, Cougars will take it. They're keeping themselves alive today. Now down 2-1. And as there's about 2.5 minutes to go until set 4, as the teams trade sides, we're going to take a short little break, but don't go anywhere because we will be right back here for set number 4 on the Cougar Sports Network. Welcome back to the Geisman Gymnasium here on the Cougar Sports Network. We are headed into set number 4 for volleyball. MSOE took the first 2, but the Cougars managed to take set number 3, albeit under slightly questionable terms, as there was a out-of-rotation call against the Raiders that MSOE spent a decent amount of time arguing, and indeed the captain of the Raiders, James Sapay, spent the entire break having the lengthy discussion with the refs, but in the end, what can you do? The point's already lost. Now the Raiders just trying to finish off the Cougars here in set number 4.
Absolutely. I mean, it is an unfortunate way to end the set if you're the Raiders, and obviously not very happy about it, but Cougars keeping that momentum alive here.
Yeah, that first point by the Cougs, a big shot by J.R. Stella, ricocheted off a Raider hand, ricocheted off another Raider hand before ending up in the lap of, I want to say Dr. Dawn here at Concordia, but hey, a Reef serve gets over the net. Hit up by Phillips. And that big shot by Callan Harris just found the gap. Marcin Hoffman was not able to get a hand on, and again, knotted up here at 1 apiece early.
Yeah, you briefly mentioned the ball landing in the hands of Dr. Dawn, but some notable faces inside Geisman today, as our president, Dr. Russell Dawn, in attendance with his wife, as well as our director of athletics, Janet Wilbur. I mentioned already some notable CUC men's volleyball alumni and some various other CUC teams in attendance here. So a good crowd inside Geisman here on a Saturday.
100%, as that 2 teams now trade service errors. The Seth Thomas serve was a little bit too strong. Now the Tyler Hollebeck serve wasn't strong enough. So possession will head back to the Raiders. It's Tommy Claus trying to give the Raiders the early lead. Fielded by Hollebeck, and that's going to be an ace for Tommy Claus. Hollebeck's reception was just low, and no Cougar could make a play on the ball.
Both Hollebeck and Ford Penguin sliding on their stomach to try to get a touch on it and just unable to do so.
That's hit by Cardenas, set up by Mosher. J.R. Stella with a big shot right off the leg of Parker Rings, and Cougars tied up at 3. And Stella really woke up, it felt like, in set number 3 when the Cougars' back was against the wall.
Absolutely, and doing so again here today, the momentum that you're seeing, especially in such a young member of this team, just being able to kind of come to life and take control is huge.
Stella's serve now gets over, fielded by Thomas. Popped up. Oh, and that's going to be 4 hits. Wasn't sure if they were going for the fake out with, or if Schultz just missed it, but in the end it was going to be 4 hits by the Raiders anyway, so the Cougars back on top.
Yeah, I think just a bit of miscommunication on the timing of that swing there resulted in that, but the Cougars more than happy to capitalize on it.
That's going to be hit up by Hollebeck. Up by Stella as Hoffman just hits it over the net, fielded by Thomas. That was a big shot by Matthew Schultz. Cardenas able to get a hand on, or able to make contact with his arm, but just went backwards instead of forwards. And again, we are tied early. Callan Harris' serve gets over, and it's going to just clip the line. Cougars thought it was going out. They were just happy to watch, but fortunate for them, just touched the edge of the line, and the Raiders now have the early lead.
Yeah, Hoffman watched that one go by. His left shoulder turned, and as soon as he turned, he kind of knew. Again, as it happens there once again, turning and looking and seeing where that ball lands, you kind of know immediately that it's gonna get the best of you.
And now Callan Harris has back-to-back service aces, his first 2 aces of the day, hoping to make it 3. Hit up by Cardenas, up by Mosher. Alexander Ford's shot's gonna be wide. And just like that, the Raiders have gone on a 4-0 scoring run.
Ford cannot believe it. Did not think that ball either missed or that it was touched on some capacity. So Cougars really looking to bounce back here.
Hollebeck's shot gets over. They just have to get it over. Hit up by Hollebeck. Mosher sets it up. Hoffman off the fingertips, hit again by Phillips. Keeps alive by the Raiders. And that shot by the Raiders is just going to soar a little bit. Callan Harris trying to find the back corner. could not, and so the Cougars able to cut off the Raiders' scoring run and get it back to a 2-point Raider lead early.
A really good run there from the Raiders, though, being able to kind of keep that ball alive in some incredibly athletic ways, and the Cougars were just able to stay calm to be able to collect that point.
Gato's going to hit it up. Gato just has to get it over the net as it bounced off the basketball hoop. And just a quick side swipe over the net by, I believe, Parker Rings. The Cougars were not expecting that one. It was a good job to keep the ball alive after the ricochet off the basketball hoop, but in the end, the Raiders got the point.
Eric, of all the home games that we've had this year, I don't think I've seen it bounce off of the basketball hoop at all, and we've had it happen twice here today.
Yeah, I don't believe I've seen it bounce off the hoop at all either. We've seen some shots off the ceiling, off the banners, but not off the hoop, as that shot's just going to end up going into the net. So now the Raiders have a 9-5 lead. Hit up by Hoffman, set by Mosher. Hollaback, yeah, just bounced off the net, ended up out of bounds, as that's going to force Coach Greg Manos to call his first time out here, as the Cougars now down 10-5 early, still with their backs to the wall, down 2-1. And as the teams take a break, so will we. We'll be right back here on the Cougar Sports Network. Two teams trading the ball back and forth. Hit up by Hollaback, hit by Mosher. Marcin Hoffman managed to get it off the hands of, I believe, Matthew Schultz, and the Cougs get the first point coming out of that timeout.
Wasting no time to get things going here.
Absolutely not. They saw what happened in the first two sets when the Raiders got ahead. And then in set number 3, Raiders got a big lead, but the Cougars were able to claw their way back. So a shot by Gonsofsky just bounces around, and Seth Thomas is going to end up going out of bounds for the Raiders. That's going to be Cougar points. From this angle, it almost looked to me like the ball clipped the line, but near side judge has a better angle than I do, and the Cougars now score 2 points right out of the timeout.
I think both teams were a little surprised on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hit up by Mosher. Set up, Thomas gets it back over. Cardenas dives, couldn't get good contact. And the Raiders answer quickly with a point of their own, holding on to an 11-7 lead in set 4 and an overall 2-1 lead. Trying to get off to a good start in conference play, starting off with a win. So it's going to get over, and Cardenas tries to make a play. Ball just goes straight down, and that's going to be a service ace for Matthew Schultz, his first ace of the day.
This Raider squad really throwing some heat off of the serves. 7 total service aces here in the game compared to the Cougars 3, but Cougars just overall having a hard time receiving their serves.
Yeah, the Raiders just been hitting them fast and hard, and the Cougars haven't been able to field them well at times. As that hesitation shot by Tommy Claus fakes out the Cougs and just ends up finding the ground, as the Raiders now jump to a 6-point lead, 13-7.
Raiders really taking advantage of the spacing that the Cougars are leaving and being strategic in where they're placing that ball, and it's proving to be successful for them.
As that serve by Matthew Schultz will go into the net for the 10th service error of the day for the Raiders. And now Marcin Hoffman with the serve to try to help get the Cougars back in this one. Hit up by Phillips. Power shot over, just off the arm of Cardenas, who made a good play to make contact, but the ball just went backwards when it should have gone forwards.
Absolutely, and the Raiders really taking advantage here of the momentum as the MSOE men's basketball team crossing behind the Raiders side of the court, seeing some exchange from fellow athletes from our visitors from North.
Big block the line by the front line of the Cougs. Hit up by Michael Cardenas. Great play. Up by Mosher. Hollebeck blocked the line by the Raiders. Once again, Cardenas. Hollebeck going to try again, but couldn't put enough on it. I think he was trying to go for a light tap to poke it over the Raiders' fingertips. Just didn't have anywhere near enough strength, and just like that, Raiders were at 15 points.
Hollebeck once again looking to be strategic with where he's placing that ball, just not enough strength on that drop.
J.R. Stella's shot's overfielded. Big shot, great save. Popped up by Mosher. J.R. Stella getting it over. Phillips takes it, Seth Thomas. Blocked at the line by the Cougs. Kept alive by the Raiders. Thomas again gets it over. Hit by Hoffman. Popped up by Mosher, and that's going to be...
They're going to get Eli Mosher for an illegal touch.
Yeah, they're going to call Mosher over the net on that one. Now the Raiders double up the Cougs 16-8. Hollebeck with a fire shot right into the near side. Two Raiders trying to make a play, but were unable to. And that's the type of shot you need if you're going to get back in this when facing an 8-point deficit.
That's just a retaliation swing right there from Tyler Hollebeck, knowing that they needed to get things going and didn't entirely agree with that previous call and jump-starting their next run here.
As that shot by Callan Harris is going to go a little bit too far. Coast to coast didn't work out. Now the Cougs officially in the double digits here in set 4, still trailing 16-10. A Reef serve is over, hit by Phillips. Seth Thomas is going to hit it up, and Reef couldn't really make good contact with that one. And that's going to give the point and possession to MSOE. Gonzowski's walking off, as is Reef. Thomas back to serve. Gets it over, popped up by Cardenas, hit by Mosher off one of the banners. Topped up at the line. Just hit over by Ford. Blocked at the line by J.R. Stella. The outstretched arm sent that one right back at the Raiders. A little bit of chaotic play. They had to play it off one of the conference banners, but in the end, Stella, monster rejection that gets the point to the Cougs.
I think the banners actually played well in CUC's favor there, as that might have slowed the ball down a little bit. Otherwise, might have just been a free ball over.
Great play by Hollebeck to save it. Cardenas just has to get it over. And that big shot's gonna go wide. No Cougar made contact with it. And just like that, Cougars only down 5. We saw this in the last set. It seemed like they were down for the count, but then they managed to claw their way back in it.
Absolutely, and that's something that the Cougars have capitalized on. We saw actually it go both ways. In the first 2 sets, the Cougars jumped out to an early lead, and the Raiders were able to come back and win those sets. Here in set number 3, and now in set number 4, the Raiders jumped out to an early lead, and the Cougars are able to kind of make their way back into it. So we're kind of seeing that reverse situation happening where a team starts off really strong and then loses momentum as the set continues on.
And again with that one, Callan Harris tried to go coast to coast but was unable to, ended up going a little too far out of bounds. That's going to force MSOE to take their first their first timeout of the set. So they try to regroup. They say, hey, we saw this happen last set. We don't want it to happen again. We're up 2-1. We're up by 4 points. We just need to get 8 to finish the job and go back to Milwaukee with the win.
Absolutely, and still having this lead over the Cougars is a good spot to be in if you're the Raiders, but for the Cougars, it's not an out-of-reach set. This is a very attainable deficit that they can overcome, that they can tie up, and being able to kind of go point for point and being able to kind of slowly get themselves back into it, it's completely within reach, especially for what we've seen these teams do today.
Oh, 100%. The Raiders still have 8 total points to score, so you're the Cougs. If you score 3 points and then give up 1, score 3 points and then give up 1, you're right back in this, and this is like a 2-point game, or that would be a tie game at that point. And so the Cougars just trying to keep the energy, keep the momentum on their side. As again we see Charlie T. Cougar going side to side. Is now Tyler Hollaback serving, and that's gonna not hit the floor. Great save by Zapay, sent back by Ford, and they're gonna call a lift on Alexander Ford for that one. That's slightly questionable call. Didn't appear that way to me, but ref saw otherwise, so now the Raiders are serving. Serve gets over, fielded by Cardenas. J.R. Stella blocked at the line. Great block by Harris and Schultz, and that just went right back at the Cougs. And again, MSU jumping out to a 6-point lead with only 6 points needed to go here in the match.
Something Coach Greg Manos for this Cougar squad really emphasizing is to remain calm. You know, we saw him, especially after that lift call, coming out off the bench to tell his team to slow down, take a breath, and then staying there to re-discuss things with his team, calling a timeout to kind of resettle them. But something that Coach Manos has emphasized is being able to slow things down and keep your composure.
Yeah, coming out of that timeout, the Raiders went on a quick 3-point to nothing run, capped by a just too strong shot by Tyler Hollaback, where it looked like he might have thought that he got a tip by one of the Raiders, but again, refs saw otherwise, so Manos calling a timeout, telling them to get their heads on straight. That's a bit of an uphill climb in set number 4, but it's definitely doable for the Cougs.
Absolutely, and this Cougar squad has done it today, and they've done it before this season, and it's something that they're looking to continue to do.
As Charlie T is dancing extremely closely to that one referee who finally broke and smiled.
Charlie T, a character here inside Geisman, a true staple of CUC spirit, and getting some applause from the MSOE parents.
He does I think a bunny hop looking thing away as the judges are heading back to their spots.
Well done on the officials for keeping composure. Saw a couple smiles there, but nothing too crazy, but great work there from the officials.
Yeah, great job of them to just not break completely and to only give away a smile to Charlie T. Is now the Raiders trying to finish the job for the day with Tommy Claus back to serve. Fielded by Hoffman. Blocked at the line. Gets back up. And that's going to be off the fingertips of Ford, I believe they're going to call it. So now the MSOE Raiders get the first point out of the CUC called timeouts, and they're just 4 points away from victory here today.
We've seen a lot of back and forth at the net, both teams kind of struggling to kind of contain the ball and put it in the right spots for their setter, and we're seeing a lot of that back and forth, one touch at the net.
And J.R. Stella with a big shot blocked by the duo of Harris and Schultz. They've been a force today. Schultz has 5 blocks. Harris, that'll be his second, but it feels like he's got more than that. Is now, again, Raiders just 3 points away from victory. Ford playing it off the net, up to Hollaback. Stella gets it over, blocked. Popped up by Cardenas, set by Mosher. Hollaback blocked in the line again. Popped up by Hollaback. Blocked again at the net by Harris and Schultz, and that front line of MSOE was working overtime there. They had several blocks just going side to side, a block, a block, a block, to end up getting the point and put them in a prime position to win this set.
I mean, just a fantastic outing from the defense of the Raiders as you see them once again at the net just showing their dominance.
Shot by Stella gets over.
And they're gonna get Parker Rings in the net on that. Rings knew it as soon as he made that attempt, kind of running himself almost clotheslining himself into the net, slowing down a little bit, but crossing nonetheless, and just an unfortunate circumstance there for the Raiders.
Yeah, no arguing from Rings on that one. He knew what he had done, but still, they got a 9-point lead, only need 2 to win. Now they only need 1, as that serve from Stella is just going to bounce under the net. And so it's going to head to Callan Harris. He's got 15 kills on the day, 2 service aces, hoping to finish the job and send the Raiders back to Milwaukee with a 3-1 win. That one's going to fly a little bit for Harris. So the Cougars stay alive for now, but have a lot of ground that they need to make up. Ford coming to serve, trying to keep the Cougars' day alive. And that's going to be wide, and that's going to do it for the day. York and Cordy, University of Chicago Cougars fall 3-1 to the Milwaukee School of Engineering Raiders as the sounds of Drops of Jupiter by Train begin to ring out in Geisman Gymnasium. It was a really back and forth day. The end result here in set number 4 might not have necessarily showed it, but Cougars put up a lot of fight today.
Absolutely, and like you mentioned, not really seeing it on the scoreboard, but the Cougars being able to kind of go back and forth a little bit and keep composure and make runs in every single set. It's a huge testament to who they are going to be in this conference stretch. And like we mentioned earlier, this Raiders team is a solid contender in the conference, finishing 4th in the conference last year, picked 4th in the preseason poll, receiving a number 1 vote in the preseason poll. So this is a really talented MSOE squad. So the Cougars being able to put up at least 1 set against them, as well as battling in the other sets, it's a huge promise for the CUC team, who did miss the tournament last year.
Yeah, and again, this is a very, like you've been saying all day, this is a very young Cougar team. They're primarily freshmen and sophomores. They got just a few juniors and a grad student, Tyler Hollebeck. But as the years go on, this team is just going to get more experience, and they're going to get better as a result of that.
Absolutely, and again, still early on in conference play. They played some really good non-conference games. Now sitting 1-1 in the conference, this CUC team has a lot of momentum to be able to move forward.
Definitely, and so we're going to go through some of the last stats for the day. Callan Harris had 15 kills for the Raiders, tied with 15 kills for Tyler Hollebeck of the Cougars. Overall, hitting percentage for the Cougars not great, just 9%, while the Raiders were able to come back with 19%. Errors were one of the big notes. The Raiders had 19 errors, while the Cougars had 31, and it's very difficult to win a volleyball match if you're going to commit 31 errors.
Absolutely, and that's something that we've seen the Cougars kind of plagued with all season so far, and it's going to be something, it's got to be a focal point of adjustment here as you head into this conference stretch, being able to kind of address those and situate and figure out how to overcome those errors.
And the big stat, when you just look at it, that jumps out to me, this Cougar front line, which is traditionally so strong, only had 4 blocks on the day. Meanwhile, the Raiders had 10, 7 of those coming from number 11, Matthew Schultz, as they were just able to kind of pick apart the Cougars front line.
Absolutely, and the Cougar front line shut down a little bit today, having a little bit of struggle in getting what they're typically used to see. But the Cougars just had a little bit of trouble overall, seeing some of those familiar things. We mentioned Tyler Hollebeck struggling to find his groove, J.R. Stella struggling to find his groove at the front line, Leon Godzowski, the reigning NAC Defensive Player of the Week, struggling to find his groove at the front line. So overall, just the Cougars had a little bit of an off day, and the ebbs and flows of college athletics is that's going to happen sometimes.
Yeah, so the Cougs, doesn't go the way they wanted. They prefer to end the day with a home win, but in the end, it will not go their way. Now they just got to hope that men's basketball can pick up the win. Cougars will next be in action on this coming Wednesday, February 26th at Lisle, Illinois. They take on Benedictine University. Try to get back to their winning ways, go up 2-1 in conference. Meanwhile, the Milwaukee School of Engineering Raiders, they've got their first win in conference. They'll take it. They continue in action against Rockford University this coming Thursday. It'll be a home match for the Raiders. Kayla, what are your final thoughts for the day?
Final thoughts is a good momentum for the Raiders heading into the rest of conference. I mean, you always want to start off conference play on a win. For the Cougars, Obviously, not having a great time, with a home loss, but a lot of good things in it, and still sitting 1-1 to start conference is not a bad place to be.
Absolutely not. You just had a rough stretch today, but you fought. They fought till the bitter end. They gave it everything they have. It was just some of those shots didn't go their way, and as we head off, none of this could be possible without our incredible crew. On scoreboard, we got Sasha Gonzalez, we got Ryan at libero. Our spotter was Sydney Pulaski-Lauer. Camera, Luciana Moran Cruz. Producer is our grad student, the one, the only Sydney Lloyd. Our other producer, Samantha Ferdinand. Terry was on scoreboard, and we have our assistant head of the athletic communications department, the one, the only Corey Welch, doing stats. I was Eric Perry, joined today by the head honcho, the captain of this ship, Kayla McLeod. We'll see you next time on the Cougar Sports Network. And as always, roll Cougs.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's Concordia University Chicago Cougars Athletics broadcast. We hope to see you on campus very soon. If you would like to learn more about what Concordia Chicago has to offer, go to cuchicago.edu.